This time we start in a virtual reality world, where two fighters are playing an important tournament. One of them says that where he comes from there is no one to fight him, and that he came to prove that he is the best in the world. The other is an assassin who claims to have made the right decision to join this, so both begin to fight. The samurai is about to cut the neck of the killer, but 1,000 seconds to cut him. The assassin laughs. And then we see how out of nowhere he manages to cut him, saying that he hates guys who pretend to be powerful. And before falling defeated to the floor, the commentator and all the spectators are amazed with the technique of the assassin. And in this case the assassin has a record called no hit. As his name says, he has never been hit during any fight. And he is considered a genius of the middle school, calling himself a Black Skull. After that we are mentioned that in the year 2020, the world changed with the birth of virtual reality called Interverse. And we see a boy which is in a virtual reality device mentioning that many of the functions of real life were replaced within Interverse. Where a very popular MMORPG game called Heroes of Time, which summarizing its acronym would be called HOT, which allows players to experience a vast fantasy world. This game is so popular that it already has several game modes such as boss raids, a coliseum among others. Within this world there are many players with the desire to reach the top and become professionals, so in this way we start the challenger. Our story starts with some guys commenting on yesterday's showdown, asking Lee Hyung-jong, also known as Black Skull within HOT, for his signature and some tips on how they can improve in HOT. He went to the finals of Planetman, which is a famous streaming company that organizes a tournament for its viewers. Lee mentions that he is not only good at games but he is very smart and good at all real-life sports. He comes from a rich family. Apart from being very handsome, Lee mentions that thanks to specialized programs he can reach 200% synchronization during the game. And they mention that he is at the level of a professional player, and if those percentages were to increase he could experience something known as super real reality. The guy in front of him says that people who are destined to succeed will succeed in everything they do, and that the world is so unfair that there are guys who will not succeed no matter what they do. Referring to a guy he is using to sit, he grabs him by the hair and threatens him, telling him to make sure he has a good balance because otherwise he will be beaten if something happens to him. The other boy mentions that if it is really right for him to do something like that in class, but nonchalantly tells him that since his mother is in charge of the parents' meeting they won't pay much attention to him. After that Lee kicks the boy, causing him to lose his balance and the other to fall with him, who gets angry and blames the boy chair, saying that if he did it on purpose, to which he gets angry and starts yelling that he will beat him up, while he can't do anything but wail. Meanwhile, at Lee's house he says that the right of the stronger is to trample on the weak since the weak have no way to go against them. Lee makes a face of satisfaction as he enjoys seeing the expressions of the losers, and thinking about his opponent in the finals, who is a person who changes roles depending on who he fights against. He expects him to choose a fighter since that role is strong against a killer, and begins to prepare to enter the virtual world, saying that he will face a great opponent, since he only knows how to use one role, which is that of a killer, against one who uses different types of roles. Already inside the game, all the audience is excited to see the final. The commentator indicates that the tournament one-on-one will begin shortly, mentioning the rules, which are that the levels and items on both sides will be adjusted to be equal, and the only variables would be the roles and skills they choose based on the strategies they each want to use. They begin by introducing Black Skull, who has the record of not having received any hits to date, saying that for a middle schooler, he will no doubt be a fearsome player when he grows up. Then they introduce the next contestant, which is called Ark. Everyone wonders what kind of role he will play against Black Skull, who is an assassin, and surprisingly he plays a mage. Everyone in the stadium is astonished since, as in all games, most mages are usually weak against assassins. They ask him if that is part of his strategy, and he mentions that it is no strategy, saying that a mage will be enough to beat an assassin of that level, which he does with the intention of provoking Black Skull. The combat is about to start. Ark tells him that he is also a middle school student, making fun of his skull mask, telling him that he is having a hard time in puberty. The combat starts and Black Skull dodges all the skills, while the other guy mentions that he is quite tough and Black Skull is slowly cutting the distance between them. Black Skull gets confident and says that he is just another attention seeker. Then he activates the skill called Rear Ambush, which makes him appear behind his opponent, and before being attacked the wizard laughs, saying that he never expected him to fall into such a simple trap, and suddenly from his back comes an explosion. Black Skull receives a direct attack and falls to his knees, while the wizard tells him that he knows how to use various roles and knows perfectly the skills of an assassin. Again he mocks, telling him that he just broke his record of not being hit, but that's not all, but that it's going to be humiliating for an assassin to lose against the wizard. But he stands up and tells him that it's too early to sing victory, and something like that is not going to defeat him. And suddenly he disappears using his ultimate skill called Dark Strike. Inside the stealth he only thinks about killing Ark. The wizard tells him loudly that it's two unfair skills, but still he has a skill prepared just for that, and begins to activate his ultimate, which is an energy explosion. And the commentator mentions that the winner will be the one who manages to hit first, but that Ark is at a great disadvantage because his ability is slow. Annoyed, Black Skull decides to attack first, and for that begins to increase its level of synchronization, thus activating the transverse synchronization. And it is mentioned that at the time that the synchro rate reaches the maximum, it will feel that time has stopped. Suddenly we see Black Skull reach 210% synchro rate, but miss the attack, and Ark tells him that his interverse is very interesting, and that in the moments when time stands still he feels he can do anything, and above his synchro level some question marks appear saying that the life of a loser is so pathetic, hitting Black Skull with his ultimate ability. Lee wakes up wondering what happened, and gets angry wondering who is that guy named Ark. In another shot we see the guy who was bullied in school, mentioning that the strong always crush the weak, but that only happens in reality, since a loser in reality doesn't have to be a loser in the virtual world too, and he remembers all the hits he received wishing to see Lee's face. The next day we see a professor stalking some guys, and his assistant asks if he hasn't decided who to recommend yet. And the two look at Ark, who had a great synchronization rate. The professor plans to go to the hot game to see for himself if someone like that can exist. And now we see the real life Ark, who gets brutally beaten by Lee, who upset takes it out on him for losing the finals, while the guys behind him mention that he wanted to enter the academy but was humiliated by Ark, snatching everything and suspecting him, as they were the same words he said to him. But the real life Ark shaking apologizes to him, and Lee leaves upset thinking that he could not have lost to someone like him. When they leave, Ark all beaten up mocks for the beating he put on Lee in the virtual world. After that we see that Ark looks at reality as something sick, as his teacher looks at him in a deplorable state and turns a blind eye, and we see him taking it out on the virtual world, killing some monsters, saying that in that place he can be himself without worries, and he mentions that he makes a living with the Interverse game, as you can change gold from the game to real world money. But suddenly he is attacked by a gang who want to take his gold. Ark wonders if they are zombies, as they are called that way because there are people who are hired by a private company who pay him to get gold within the game, and that most of them are indebted or prisoners in real life. But Ark decides to run away because if he kills normal players he will receive a penalty, since all except for one of the gang are normal players, and the only one who is not is the one who murders the players. Ark is cornered and they manage to pierce him with a spear, but before being attacked he mentions that maybe in real life he can let himself be attacked, but not in the virtual world, and starts to hit them, killing them one by one. He goes straight to the leader, but he stops him, saying that he became a killer. And in the distance another person is after Ark. He mentions that this guy is pretty strong, and now he counterattacks, making a cut in Ark's neck, while the enemy leader tells him that he can not only beat him with skill, but also other elements in the game influence him, and destroys Ark's sword easily. And he mentions that his moves are good but his level is too low, and before the final blow, someone comes to save him, which is the guy who was looking for Ark, and asks him directly if in the duel against Cranio Angro he cheated, but he immediately denies it, saying that he has never done that. The hunter is surprised by the strength of that guy, since he leaves his sword trembling and corners him easily, but he has his attention focused on Ark, who tells him that how could he reach 400% synchronization without using some kind of external program. Ark is surprised since he himself did not know that he had reached such amount of synchronization. The guy with mask still doubts him, but Ark mentions to him that to see the sync stats you have to pay, and he has never spent anything inside the game. Suddenly some kind of slime arrives in a chest, saying that someone here is using hacks, and goes directly against Ark, asking him to admit it, to which he tells him that if he violates the rules they will block him permanently, and the guy with the mask challenges him to prove his innocence, letting the hunter go back to attack Ark again. But he with a smile says that he got to have such a high synchronization is because he is special, and begins to elevate his senses to the maximum reading. Easily the hunter's attacks. The slime is amazed because Ark is on another level. He tears the hunter's eye with his dagger, who scared wonders if he can see the future, and the slime is surprised because there is no forbidden program. And Ark managed to reach 527% synchronization, easily ending with the hunter. The masked guy is amazed seeing the birth of something irregular, to which he approaches him to ask for something, but Ark says that inside the Interverse he is someone special. But suddenly he is cut in two by the masked guy, and he mentions that if you want to recover his items they have to find someone with the ID of hide in the bush, and that he himself will be waiting for him, and so he dies inside the game. Also after that we see a little robot which is worried about Ark, who in tears asks you what he should do, and the name of this little robbery of T1, and he gets angry because he had never seen Ark like that. But he starts to scold him as he tells him everything that happened with him inside the game. But he just tells him to go and try to find the person with the ID. The robot tells Ark that he is an expert at asking for favors, and that he will teach him the best technique to ask for all his items back. And then we see the masked guy, who is surprised seeing the way Ark asks him to please get his items back. But the masked guy tells him that he was going to give them back to him in the same way, but with some conditions, making him a contract in which if he answers his questions he will give them back to him. Ark doesn't hesitate and accepts, since he also has some questions for the masked guy. Ark answers a question halfway, and the game automatically strips him of all his stuff, leaving him naked. and there he realizes that the contracts in Interverse are serious and safe. Ark asks him why he is doing that to him, to which the masked one mentions that he is interviewing him since he is forming a team, and after that he asks him if he has any future goal. He quickly answers him that one in which he can earn enough money, and the masked man tells him that the team he is forming will play in the league called Fantasy Academy. Arl is surprised since that league is what most of the students aspire to become professional players, and at the end the masked man asks him that if there is a strong enough enemy that surpasses his stats by far, he would have the conviction to challenge him, and Ark without hesitation answers yes, but out of nowhere the memories of Black Skull come to him. So he changes his answer to a resounding no. The masked man keeps silent and mentions that every year there is a sparring competition among the students of the academy, and mentions that there is a teacher who has his sights set on certain students, but that many of them fail and resign themselves, but only a small part remains and that some step on the dreams of others and stay true to their own dreams. He points his sword directly at him and asks him if he has the confidence to survive such a place, and questions himself thinking about what he should do when he meets such a person. He reaffirms his ideals and mentions that the answer was already decided from the beginning, saying that it will push him forward. The masked man looks at him and tells him that even though he has such a high synchronization, there are still many things he still doesn't know, telling him that in the process of entering he will have to use all his strength, and mentions that test in 3 months, asking him if he is prepared for a difficult training. He smiles, saying of course. The next day he would begin his training, but only finds a girl with rabbit ears. She is warming up and launches herself to attack him directly. Ark dodges him at the last second, but the girl takes advantage of this and gives him a blow, telling him to have a duel. Ark gets serious and dodges her attacks and they begin to fight. Meanwhile, the professor who had left chapters ago talks to his assistant, telling him that he sent Carrie to fight him. His assistant mentions that Carrie will give him a beating, but the professor doubts if that's what will happen, and to everyone's surprise, the masked man is actually the professor. He arrives where the confrontation is, seeing Ark in a pathetic situation, thinking if he had too high expectations on Ark, and after that he introduces them. Carrie gets upset because she can't believe he is her teammate and immediately leaves to train. The professor asks him how was his duel against her, and Ark replies that he was much stronger than his previous opponent, as he seemed to move by pure instinct. The professor tells Ark that he needs to learn martial arts and meditations to increase his mental and physical abilities within the virtual reality. Ark confidently says that he will achieve it within the next 3 months, but the teacher mentions to him that this is impossible, since just as he has his high synchronization, Carrie was born with his gaming abilities. Ark tells him that before he dedicates himself 100% to his training, he has some pending at school, and thinks of Black Skull and his gay, who bullied him. Leaving school, Black Skull thinks that at last that loser will no longer attend school, and suddenly someone appears to him. He realizes that the guy who is in front of him is nothing more and nothing less than our protagonist, telling him loser to Black Skull, asking him if he is not curious about who was that character who humiliated him, revealing that Ark is actually him, challenging him to fight now in real life. After that, Ark reveals that he doesn't actually need glasses, as he does so with the intention of being a normal school character, expressing himself as he normally is within the virtual world. As with that mask, he can avoid being knocked down in difficult moments, mentioning that only the idiots would enter a fight they can't win. Black Skull approaches him, telling him that he doesn't care that he is Ark, that he will give him a beating, and throws a punch to his shoulder. Meanwhile, Ark thinks of a strategy, and starts to think of it as a game, provoking him by telling him that he sucks at games. That makes Cráneo Negro furious, and Ark remembers the words of a fighting YouTuber, but Cráneo Negro kicks him without being able to react at that moment. So Ark finds out that fighting YouTubers can't be trusted. Cráneo Negro throws a flurry of attacks at him, and Ark can only try to block them, until he decides to counterattack. But this doesn't hurt him much, and he throws a direct hit to his head, knocking him to the floor. Cráneo Negro asks him if he really thought he could hit him now that he is alone, and Ark tells him with determination and all beaten up, that he is not scary at all, and spits at him, insulting him. Ark starts to question what his master would say, but his master doesn't know the answer either XD, and he remembers the words he said to the masked man, and he gets up in an instant without Cráneo Negro giving him time to react, and gives him a well-struck punch in the face. He comes to himself, saying he has to shield himself from Cráneo Negro, but to his surprise he is lying on the floor by the blow he gave him. Ark cannot believe that he has beaten the person who for so long was his aggressor, and drops tears from his face and launches the biggest scream of his life, knowing for the first time how satisfying it is to beat an opponent who is much stronger than him in real life. After that, he arrives to his room next to T1, and goes happily to his bed to rest. After a while, Ark meets with his teacher, who notices him different and begins to talk to him about how will be the training that he will have to take, telling him that each academy has 10 trainers and each of them can recruit several students for the competitions, but they can also recruit 2 people who are not from the academy, being recommended by themselves, as is the case of Ark and Carrie. And so begins the training of Ark, which will be divided into 4 parts. The first, which is pure theory, the second, which is a physical training but not in the game but in real life, the third, which would be to level up by killing monsters in hot, and the last, which is to fight against Carrie in the arena without using any type of weapon. And while our protagonist suffers, she enjoys it. But Ark remembers an important lesson from his fight in the real world against Black Skull, which is that as long as he does not give up, a path will open. And so the 3 months of training passed and it was time for the test, and Ark packs his things. When T1 leaves, he remembers all the years he has lived together with Ark and his family, seeing from all that Ark had to go through after his parents disappeared, and I can do nothing but encourage him to achieve his dream. We see our protagonist getting on a bullet train which his teacher paid for. When he arrives at his destination, he meets the teacher's assistant, who will be his new guide, and welcomes him to the city. Takes him to the hotel where he will stay while testing. He also mentions that he had already met him in the game, and it is revealed that he is the commentator of the tournament, and he was the one who recommended him to the teacher. But Ark is not surprised since he hardly watches his transmissions, who goes inside the virtual reality to explore the city on his own, which is kind of like the same city in real life but in virtual reality, adding that there you can freely use your avatar and you can practically use powers to get anywhere faster. He is fascinated seeing the amount of people that are in that world. He quickly goes to see a legendary statue which can only be seen inside the virtual world, and this one represents the best gamer in the whole world called Farseer. He started praying to the statue to do well in his test, and we see that he is not the only one. Also, Carrie is praying to it and they start to argue for a while, until they decide to explore the academy, but Carrie coldly asks him why he wastes his time if he can't enter the academy. And this leaves Ark thoughtful, as the same Carrie he trained with doubts his capabilities. She reminds him that out of the 132 times they faced each other, she won them all. But this did not matter to our protagonist because every time he lost he thought of a way to defeat her the next time. Enjoying the process, he shouts at her that he will not stay like this forever, and the two begin to fight. Ark manages to corner her, but he himself stopped the blow he made directed towards her face. He tells her to take back his words and that he will pass tomorrow's test, but she grabs his arm and knocks him to the ground, telling him that she will not take back her words. Ark throws a tantrum, but she mentions that she said that because the academy does not materialize for strange people in the virtual world, that he won't even be able to see her, and now that he looks like a fool. She tells him that she would never say something like that as she is also part of his team, and this makes him seal tears and snot for the words that Carrie said to him, and knocks him down with a punch in the face. She also tells him that she is in the same hotel, so they decide to go for some dinner together. But now he is left thinking as he gets nervous because he will meet Carrie in person, wondering what she would be like in real life, since he has only seen her inside hot and well he has his own image of her since he spent a lot of time with her inside the virtual world. And suddenly he is surprised seeing a beautiful girl in front of him calling him an idiot. He quickly covers himself and Carrie just wonders why he is flinching like that, and they both introduce themselves by their real name. She is called Leisha, so he introduces himself as well. After that they go for some dinner and she tells him that she is from F City. Ark quickly recognizes the city as it is famous because the crime rate is very high with the worst public safety. Ark asks her that how she became a recommended student, to which she replies that she was recruited while fighting a professor in the arena, which surprisingly is the masked one. But despite facing him many times, she could never beat him, and they both wonder what the professor will be like in real life, who is in an emergency meeting by the principal along with the other teachers, and some of them mention that his students are very good. And one of them gets annoyed with the teacher as it bothers him that they bring students from slums, when suddenly they are interrupted by the principal, who summoned them to announce how the exam will be, mentioning that it will be a battle royale, that is still all against, and that the last one left will be the winner. He explains that even if only one wins, all the others will have their own evaluation depending on the KDA. And he will divide all the students into different ranks, and depending on their rank there will be more or less students, but only one will be in the S rank who will be rewarded with a bonus for the exam. And so all the teachers along with the director begin to accommodate them, while our protagonist is already in his room resting from everything he did with Carrie that night. The next day our protagonist is in the academy in a room exclusively for him, and he mentions that he did not sleep last night because he was nervous, but this is no time for excuses, and he will give his best in the test, which begins and they show us all the participants inside a royal palace, and he realizes that most of them have furries characters, and he meets Carrie, who greets him, and suddenly they are interrupted by the director, who is wearing an avatar of a king, introducing himself to the 20 students who will take the test. He begins to tell them the rules, mentioning that only capable people will pass the test, and the last to survive will receive a bonus. He also tells everyone that they will have a rank according to their abilities, but if they manage to kill the opponent of higher rank, this will become their new rank. But all the ranks will be hidden until each one has their first kill record, and finally he tells them that there is one of S rank among them, and most of the students are excited to hear that, since only a few will pass the test. So begins the test, transporting everyone to the battlefield. Ark appears in a forest and goes looking for chests to get better items than the others, while gradually the map will disappear and the first item you find are some steel panties, and to his surprise is not the only one who is there. Both turn quickly, and this is with a guy who is the movie Frozen. Ark is scared shitless to see him, while they are being watched by teachers and the principal, showing us the teacher who recruited the snowhead guy. Both stand up and slowly walk towards each other, but they pretend to ignore each other. The two walk away while we see the other players who are also being watched, seeing who is the one to destroy the tranquility in the game. Suddenly we see Carrie, who is the only one who is looking for the others to hunt them. Meanwhile, a participant found a legendary sword. And not only that, but he is also fully equipped with overpowered objects. And Carrie is the one who finds him starting to attack him. Without blinking, the other guy tells him that he already has everything he needs, but for that being that Carrie hasn't found good items. But he gets excited, telling her that if she kills him, all those items will now be hers. Suddenly, the golden weapon guy easily breaks Carrie's sword using an ability of his sword. This one launches to attack her now that she is unarmed. But she manages to avoid the attack, and the other guy wonders how she can move like that. And once again she launches to attack him. While the guy in the golden armor looks at her power and mentions that she is cheating, since her stats are very high. She smiles and mentions to him that it is not cheating. But thanks to the interverse, she is already able to use force impulses and thus manages to give him a good punch in the stomach, making him reproach himself, asking if she is rank S, to which she replies that she is about to find out. But before giving him the final blow came a message saying that someone has already achieved the first death. And this one is surprised since the first person here is a kill was Ark. And 10 minutes before that we see him on the battlefield with a decent team, and now that he has his team complete he sets out to find other fighters, and out of nowhere I find a guy who was with his head stuck inside a box. Ark thinks that maybe he is a dead guy and approaches him, but surprisingly he gets up and his avatar looks like that of an elf, but he puts his head back in the box since he wants to sleep another while. After that he gets up to fight Ark, and he sets out to attack him, remembering the practical fighting theory he had in his training. He attacks him, but the guy with elf avatar stops him. And surprisingly, he is also a student of the teacher of the one with the snow head. And now he starts counterattacking Ark, who beats up our protagonist, who admits he is quite strong, but he starts increasing his synchronization rate. The enemy notices this and heads towards him, but notices that despite going against Ark with all his might, Ark manages to cover himself at the last second. And the elf doesn't even understand what is happening and is already a bit tired, including his teacher, who doesn't understand either. But the elf gets serious and pulls out a black sphere from his inventory, making a huge smoke screen all over the battlefield, making that now Ark can't see what he will do, and he is attacked from behind. And if Ark's weapon is his synchronization, the elf's is his great ability to listen to waves that help him to know what his opponent will do. Ark thinks of a strategy, remembering the professor's words, and he starts again to increase his synchronization to the maximum, even if that ends up affecting him, remembering that if he uses all his synchronization he gets into a kind of extreme fatigue, and he won't be able to do anything after that. The elf starts attacking him again. Meanwhile, the director and the others watch their fight, seeing Han with 300% of synchronization, and when he looks at Ark's stats he is surprised, turning to look at his teacher. We return again to the battle, and before Ark is attacked, he reacts by blocking his attack and stuns the elf, but Ark is surprised as he didn't know what happened because his body moved by itself. But he has no time to think about it and quickly goes to attack the elf, cutting him several times and piercing him with his sword, and thus ends the elf's life. This one wishing to meet again with Ark before his avatar dies, and we see his real body saying that the academy could be fun. But with the uncertainty of not knowing if it will happen, Ark car tired to the ground, wondering what was that happened a moment ago, and observes an announcement that tells him that he made the first kill. Anxious to see his rank, he discovers that the two were in the rank D, which is the lowest, and observes the ranks of the other players, seeing Carrie in rank A, along with two more guys and a strange guy who is rank S, wondering how strong he will be. The director observes everyone's reactions upon finding out their ranks, and out of everyone we see Carrie, who is anxious to get first place with the armor and super powerful items she took from the other guy. Now we head to an uninhabited area, seeing a rank guy going after the S rank, but he is not alone. Two other people join him to take down the S rank, but he doesn't flinch, and we see his name is King, who plans to show him the difference between their ranks. One of the guys behind starts to attack him, but who easily stops him, telling them that he can't imagine losing to them, and knocks him down easily. The others get upset and decide to attack him at the same time, but King easily can against them, and the teacher in charge of him mentions that who is a complete character in all virtual reality statistics, and is someone who never thinks that he will be defeated even once, as they watch how he is ending the lives of the three who attacked him. The director mentions that only 3 could face him, saying that the fun of a game is that you will never know the outcome until the end of the result window, and we see Ark among one of them 3. At the end we are shown that only 5 survivors were left, and among them are Carrie and Mai, who are in another terrain different from Ark, King, and the other guy. We see Ark inside the abandoned castle, depressed for being the shortest of all. Suddenly he observes someone lying on the floor, and it is the guy who has a pickaxe in his mouth. But he is not alone, and next to him we see King, who realizes he is being watched, and Ark is scared shitless because he was discovered. The guy with the pickaxe decides to attack King with a special object and seems to have connected a blow to him, but he blocked it easily, while Ark wonders if he will be able to defeat an S rank. The longer King's fight goes on, the other guy realizes that he is at another level, and this one takes advantage of an opening to attack him, and ends with him saying that if there are guys of that level in a rank, then it won't take him long to get to the top of the academy. But Ark appears behind him, telling him to fight him, who is surprised that he didn't escape, and Ark answers him with a cool phrase, telling him that why would he escape if the shortcut to the top is right in front of him. King tells him that he will finish in 20 seconds before the danger zone gets there, and starts attacking him, but Ark is not intimidated and also attacks him, but he leaves. an opening, and King takes advantage of it, but when he realizes it, Ark was already in another position. But before he could react, King gives him a kick and goes counting the seconds left. And this makes Ark more upset and remembers everything he did in his training and manages to stun King with the effect of his shield. Taking advantage of that opening, Ark lunges, but King activates an object to remove the stun and manage to react to Ark's attack, and suddenly time runs out. King starts to get annoyed and blaming the Academy for misjudging Ark, but what bothers you the most is not having kept his word, and starts attacking him harder without giving him time to rest. The teachers are impressed by the level of the battle, and King's teacher starts telling the story of how he met him, seeing how King's father was telling him how he got to the final of a boxing competition without taking any hits against all the other opponents, and in the final he was easily winning the fight until he slipped on his own beads of sweat. And so the other guy was able to give him the first hit in the whole competition. But after that, a disaster happened and he started to massacre the rival, and the face of King became similar to that of a villain, until the referee decided to stop the fight. But the story does not end there, but the wall full of trophies will be all of King achieved, only that at his 16 years old, and his father tells him that for him to reach higher, he has to experience the defeat, asking him if there will be anyone in the academy who can defeat him. But his father himself doesn't believe that there can be such a person, saying that he is a narcissist who modified even his own virtual avatar, just like the real-life King. Suddenly, Ark hadn't realized something. He had already been cut by King because he can't use sync anymore. So King decides to throw his sword and smashes him against the wall. Ark thinks that after all his training, he can't do anything without his sync, and looks at King's eyes that remind him of Black Skull. But little by little his life bar is going down, saying he hates that all his effort is denied to him. Meanwhile, we see Carrie fight against the other girl who calls her a monster, and Carrie kicks her all over her face, thus counting her third kill. She realizes that only Ark and King are left, but she decides to sit down and wait for her opponent to arrive. We go back again to where they are, and Ark tries to attack him with his shield, but King evades him and backs away, wondering why his eyes change so suddenly. So she decides to attack him, but Ark evades him easily, and the director is surprised seeing the state Ark is in, as his synchronization level increases rapidly, reaching 800%. King worries as there is not much time left until it is a danger zone, and is slightly cut off by Ark, while we see the perspective of Ark, who says he can sense everything, even the variables and emotional state of his opponent, and so he manages to hit King, but suddenly we see that his synchronization level is at 999%. And the real world Ark starts to bleed, while King is in despair because nothing works against Ark. But suddenly in front of him appears Ark's body lying on the floor. Meanwhile, Ark's professor goes to check on him, and looks he has passed out in his virtual reality machine. And after that he wakes up in a hospital bed with a horrible headache. The professor mentions to him that from now on he has to avoid actions that are a burden to his body, but Ark doesn't recognize him since he has never seen him in person. So the professor decides to ask him the same question when he told him about taking the test. Ark sees him, and tells him that he is more ordinary than he thought. And after that the professor tells him that Carrie was the winner of the admission test, but that she was dissatisfied since King didn't have time to escape the area after his fight against Ark, and was eliminated. In the end, the professor compliments him by telling him that for him he shined brighter than anyone else in the whole competition, and also congratulates him because he passed the test. He lets out a shout of happiness, but suddenly the professor tells him that it is forbidden for him to use synchronization from now on. A month has passed and we are at the graduation ceremony of Ark's school, seeing some girls who are astonished because he entered the Fantasy Academy. But those words were directed to Black Skull, who will also go to the same academy as Ark, and talking about him suddenly Ark approaches and arrives with Black Skull, telling him that apparently they will both go to the same academy, showing him his acceptance letter, and the girls are astonished since he entered as a recommendation, who lets out a naughty laugh making fun of him and leaves epically. After that he packs his things again since he won't see T1 in 3 years, remembering everything that happened with him and his family before his father disappeared and his mother is sick. He goes straight to hug him, telling him to wait for him for the next 3 years that he will be gone. But suddenly T1 falls to the ground, but he had transferred his data to Ark's cell phone, mocking him, and cheerfully tells him that he will accompany him. And so begins the life of Ark inside the academy. The quartermaster tells him that from now on they will be called by their username, and will have ranks ranging from bronze to challenger, saying that the higher they are, the higher the floor where they are. And suddenly they begin to assign their ranks, starting with Carrie, who for having won the test she will have the rank S, which is equal to Diamond, and next to her is King. She greets him and mentions him not to lose to anyone because he is her prey, but he ignores her and goes straight to our protagonist. While the guys next to him think of him as their inferior, King stands in front of them asking who of all is Ark, and he answers him, and they all think why would he be interested in someone of D rank. But King approaches in front of him, telling him that next time he will win. Carrie looks WTF, while Ark gets all nervous and looks funny.